I sold my mother's heirlooms and worked 3 jobs to raise money for my boyfriend, Julian Hayes, who was suffering from ALS, but during one of my shifts, I caught him holding Serafina, a supermodel, sneering, "Luna is just a loyal dog." He was wearing a custom suit I couldn't afford even with all my savings, turning my filial devotion and the exhaustion from my late-night jobs into a mockery. How much more bitter truth was hidden within this elaborate deception woven from a terminal illness, beyond just betrayal. A second before pushing open the private room door, I was secretly thrilled about the generous tip, but when I saw Julian Hayes surrounded by a group of Tylers in the center of the room, my smile vanished. He was dressed in a custom suit, radiating an air of nobility, and looked full of vigor, where was the slightest hint of the frailty of someone who needed my careful tending from a sickbed. He elegantly swirled the whiskey in his hand, exuding an innate aristocratic aura. I stared at him again in disbelief. Hearing Serafina's simpering voice beside him, "Julian, is the Cinderella game fun? What kind of spell did that Luna cast on you, making you go to such lengths to put on this boring act?" Julian Hayes didn't answer immediately. He took a small sip of his drink. A smile that made my heart ache hidden in his eyes. He reached out to gently caress Serafina's cheek, then leaned down and kissed her. An ambiguous atmosphere filled the private room, making my presence feel so out of place. Serafina giggled, cooing, "Julian, don't be like that. Why don't you come to my place tonight? I promise you'll have a good time." Only then did Julian Hayes withdraw his hand, saying mockingly, "That's why Luna is so much fun. She's so innocent, unlike you, who throws herself at every man you see." Serafina practically melted into his arms, laughing uncontrollably. "Oh, stop it. You can't say that about me." I felt suffocated, struggling to swallow the bitterness that welled up in my heart. At that moment, I was finally certain this scoundrel before me was Julian Hayes, my boyfriend of 4 years, with whom I had shared every day in poverty. 6 months ago, Julian Hayes tearfully broke up with me. "Luna, let's break up. I don't want to be a burden to you." In that instant, my tears fell uncontrollably. Why break up? Did something happen? I clung to him tightly, looking up at him in disbelief. Julian Hayes was silent for a moment, then pulled out a diagnosis report. I took it and saw the large characters: amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. My world collapsed at that moment, my voice choked with tears. How could this happen? Julian Hayes said nothing, only held me tighter. I felt dampness on my shoulder. "Luna, I don't want you to see me in such a miserable and ugly state when my ALS reaches its late stage." His voice trembled slightly, filled with despair. "I'll move out tomorrow, while I can still move. Let me hold you tightly one last time." My eyes turned red with anger, and I slapped his back hard, sobbing, "What do you take my feelings for you for? How could I let you bear this pain alone? Of course, we'll face it together, but Julian Hayes' treatment costs millions, an astronomical sum for a recent college graduate like me." After a long pause, he reluctantly released me, his voice low and hoarse. "Luna, I don't want treatment anymore. I just want to spend this last bit of time with you." Looking at his vulnerable expression, I forced a smile and gently comforted him. "Don't worry, I'll find a way." I only had a few $1,000s in savings, which was a drop in the bucket for the medical expenses. I sat quietly on the bed, staring blankly at the cabinet. Inside were my mother's heirlooms, a set of jewelry, and my only valuable possessions. On one side was the boyfriend I had loved for 4 years, and on the other, my mother's heirlooms. I was faced with a difficult choice. That night, I curled up at the head of the bed, hugging myself tightly, tears streaming down my face, repeatedly blaming myself. "I'm sorry, Mom. Your daughter is useless. Your daughter is unfilial." In my most desperate moments, it was Julian Hayes who pulled me out of the mire. Now that he was in trouble, I couldn't abandon him. The next day, I sold the heirlooms and, with Julian Hayes, moved into a damp basement apartment. But this money was still not enough to cover the expensive treatment. Because of this, I had to give up the internship I had just found and took on 3 part-time jobs at once. Every day, I ran around from morning till night. Between the bar, convenience store, and tutoring classes, I was exhausted to the point of collapse. Just to save a little more money to allow me to work properly, Julian Hayes always went to the hospital alone. At that time, I only blamed myself for being incapable, unable to take full care of him. Now, I felt like a clown, a dog without dignity. From the fawning attitudes of the crowd towards him, it wasn't hard to guess that Julian Hayes was from a wealthy and influential background. Even though the private room was warm, I felt cold all over. Hey, what are you standing there for? Dumbfounded? Don't you have any sense? Hurry up and pour Julian a drink, you useless trash. You deserve to work for others your whole life, a Tyler impatiently yelled. I snapped out of my thoughts, stiffly pouring drinks for the group of playboys as I passed Julian Hayes. I caught the familiar scent of him, and for a moment, I was dazed, my hand trembled, and I accidentally spilled liquor on his suit. Serafina immediately stood up beside him, pointing at my nose and cursing. Are you out of your mind? Julian's suit is worth half your lifetime's wages. Can you afford to pay for it? I hurriedly got up, trying to wipe the liquor stain with tissue paper. But Serafina slapped me hard. She pulled me away from Julian Hayes, then scornfully poured the rest of the champagne over my head. You trash. Look at how you behave. Even streetwalkers are better than you. Do you really think your little tricks will seduce Julian? Everyone burst into laughter, and I was so humiliated I wanted to disappear into the ground. Champagne ran down my cheeks, smudging my cheap makeup. My face must have looked horrible. I saw the man in the booth seating central to the group let out a pleased chuckle. I used to be so infatuated with Julian Hayes's voice, especially when he held his second-hand guitar, singing to me on the balcony of our small rental apartment. However, the familiar laughter now stung my ears. I was about to quietly retreat with my tray, but then Julian Hayes's cold voice rang out. Stop, you offended me and you think you can just leave? I don't think you can afford to pay. How about this? Drink this bottle of hard liquor, and well, consider tonight's incident over. With that, he pushed an unopened bottle of hard liquor in front of me. I stood there, hesitant to take the drink. My voice trembled as I said, I'm sorry, I'm allergic to alcohol. However, the deafening electronic music drowned out my voice. Julian Hayes frowned, as if he hadn't heard what I said. Serafina, who had spilled the drink on me earlier, heard it and sneered, allergic to alcohol. What are you pretending for? Don't you just want to get Julian's attention? Julian Hayes waved his hand, pointing at the overturned fruit platter on the floor. If you can't drink, then get down and eat these fruits. My heart sank. Before I could react, I was pushed down to the ground. Stop playing games. Hurry up and eat. A man roughly grabbed my hair. I struggled to get up but was held down firmly. Someone picked up the fruit from the floor and forcibly stuffed it into my mouth. No, I can't eat mango, I mumbled incoherently. But no one paid attention to my words. Cold, sticky fruit pulp covered my cheeks and lips. Someone squeezed my chin, forcing me to swallow the fruit in my mouth. I felt my throat begin to itch, and breathing became difficult. I curled up on the ground, coughing violently. Feeling my airway start to swell, panic and despair overwhelmed me. I knew the allergic reaction was rapidly setting in. Julian Hayes looked down at me from above, a hint of confusion in his eyes, seemingly surprised by my reaction, but he quickly shifted his gaze. As if I were just an insignificant diversion, my dignity was trampled underfoot by the man I loved most. The bitterness in my heart could no longer be suppressed. I huddled on the ground, finally catching my breath. I suppressed the churning in my stomach and struggled to stand up, my legs trembling. I prepared to leave, but Julian Hayes called out to me again. You did well. Take this watch as a reward. Sell it, and you'll be able to live comfortably for the rest of your life. I looked at him indifferently, trying to find a trace of the Julian Hayes I knew in that familiar face. Unfortunately, there was nothing. Just as I reached out to take the watch, he chuckled softly. You're very much like my girlfriend, even having the same allergies to alcohol and mango. But she's not as materialistic as you. If it were her, she definitely wouldn't accept it, girlfriend. I sneered inwardly. How ironic. I silently withdrew my hand, but Julian Hayes threw the watch into my arms. It's filthy, just take it and get out. The watch alone looked incredibly valuable. It was a luxury item far beyond the reach of someone from my background. At that moment, I realized that one watch could be worth my entire life's effort. I turned to leave. Before I had gone far, I heard someone ask, Julian, seriously, that woman sold even her mother's heirlooms for you. Don't you feel anything at all? Julian Hayes said nothing, just idly played with the lighter in his hand. He chuckled softly. Just a dog. The woman who can make me fall in love hasn't appeared yet. My breathing grew more rapid, the allergic reaction making me feel like I could suffocate at any moment. I knew it. Julian always plays the field without getting attached, Is that woman particularly good at pleasing people? Maybe after you're tired of her, you can let us brothers have a taste." Before he could finish, Julian Hayes kicked him to the ground, grabbed a bottle from the table, and smashed it over the man's head. Glass shards cut his hand, and blood flowed freely. Julian Hayes's eyes were cold, as if he were looking at a corpse. "Do you even deserve it?" No one dared to step forward to stop him. Someone cautiously reminded him, "Julian, don't get angry. If you're injured, it'll be hard to explain when you go back." Hearing this, Julian Hayes calmed down, signaled for everyone to be quiet, and dialed my phone. My phone suddenly vibrated in my pocket, exceptionally loud in the silent private room. I hastily pressed the hang-up button, about to leave, but he called out to me, "Wait." My heart pounded like thunder, and all the color drained from my face. "Look up," Julian Hayes commanded coldly. I took a deep breath and slowly lifted my head. I could feel my face swollen from the allergic reaction, sticky fruit pulp still clinging to it, making me look utterly disheveled. Julian Hayes frowned, examining my face closely. He stared at me for a while, a flicker of confusion in his eyes, quickly replaced by disgust. "You're goddamn ugly," he said in disgust. "Get out." As soon as I pushed open the door and stepped out, I heard someone ask Julian Hayes what he thought of me. He raised the corner of his mouth slightly, nonchalantly. "I just love watching her work like a dog for me. It's so much fun to make her fall madly in love with me, and then push her into the abyss." Everyone burst into laughter. I trembled all over, the suffocating sensation in my chest almost making me lose my balance. How I wanted to rush in and confront him, but the vast disparity in our statuses made me swallow that impulse. I simply couldn't afford to offend him. I stumbled into the employee break room, trembling as I swallowed the antihistamine I carried with me, and curled up in a corner. Half an hour later, Ms. Brenda, the manager, pushed open the door. Seeing my terrible state, she cried out and rushed to my side. "Luna, are you okay?" I shook my head, forcing myself to say, "Ms. Brenda, I won't be coming in tomorrow. My boyfriend is dead." I had mentioned Julian Hayes's illness to her before, and she had specifically arranged for me to work in areas with generous tips. Now, suddenly quitting, I felt a pang of guilt. She didn't ask more questions, just gave me a gentle hug. Back at my rental apartment, I, as if possessed, opened my phone and searched for information on Julian Hayes. A prominent social media trending topic caught my eye. New York City's notorious playboy heir Julian Hayes street racing with Serafina on a rainy night. The accompanying photo showed him arrogantly standing on the roof of a red Ferrari, arm around a sexy woman, his smile wild and uninhibited. This was the real him. I crumbled at that moment. I recalled our first meeting when he wore faded jeans, looking constrained and uneasy. He was a completely different person from the confident, ruthless Julian Hayes I saw at the bar tonight. I couldn't help but mock myself. His acting was so good, he truly deserved an Oscar. Ever since he fell ill, I woke up at 5 every day to catch the subway. To save money for his medical expenses, I lived frugally, eating only cheap instant meals and buying cheap snacks close to their expiration dates. I tutored, handed out flyers, toiled without complaint. Many times, I was so exhausted I nearly fainted. My friends advised me not to push myself so hard. I always smiled and said it was nothing. All I got in return were their exasperated eye rolls. Looking back now, I felt utterly ridiculous. At that time, I believed that no matter how hard it was worth it, because the Julian Hayes of the past genuinely made me feel that he loved me very, very much. My parents passed away one after another from illness just before I graduated from college. I blamed myself, thinking that if I had detected their illnesses earlier, perhaps the outcome would have been different. Because of this, I suffered from severe depression and anorexia. In just 6 months, I became a skeleton. At 56, I weighed only 65 pounds even with a winter coat on. The day I met Julian Hayes, I was pacing on a rooftop, thinking that a single jump would end this painful life. He found me, pulled me back, and held me tightly. He was truly kind then. Due to long periods of irregular eating, I developed a severe stomach condition. After we started dating, Julian Hayes worked and took care of me. Even though he was constantly busy, he never forgot to remind me to drink water and eat on time. He would rush home during his lunch break to cook for me, making sure he saw me eat lunch. After work, no matter how late, he would cook whatever I wanted. Julian Hayes, in my despair, was the only light, making me want to grasp onto him without hesitation, but it wasn't until I saw a different Julian Hayes at the bar that I realized it was all a lie. I suppose this was part of his game too, to make me experience the despair of falling from heaven to hell. My phone suddenly chimed. I opened it and saw a text message from Julian Hayes. Luna, I'm so tired today. I want to rest early. Can you come see me tomorrow? It even came with a cute emoji, perhaps because he was injured. Julian Hayes sent the message to prevent me from becoming suspicious. It suited me fine. I didn't want to see him either. I casually tossed my phone aside and began to pack. If I couldn't provoke him, couldn't I at least avoid him? I packed a few simple clothes. My gaze was suddenly drawn to the bracelet on my wrist. I gently touched the bracelet, and my eyes couldn't help but well up again. Julian Hayes had personally woven it for me after we started dating. At the time, he had just started working, and his salary wasn't high, but for our anniversary, he secretly took on a part-time job delivering packages for a courier company. He left early and came back late every day. My heart gradually grew uneasy, and I became suspicious and paranoid. Like a crazy person, I cried and questioned him. Julian Hayes realized his neglect and kept reassuring me that he hadn't done anything to betray me, but he just wouldn't tell me what he was doing behind my back. I was very angry and gave him the silent treatment. It wasn't until our anniversary that he presented me with a sky full of fireworks and this bracelet. A gold bead hung on the bracelet. I burst into tears. Julian Hayes, you jerk, why didn't you tell me? Why couldn't you tell me? Do you think what you did makes you seem so great, and makes me seem unreasonable and difficult? My emotions had been unstable since I fell ill. I thought he would get angry and then curse me for being ungrateful and heartless, but to my surprise, he apologized proactively, softening his voice to coax me. Luna, I was wrong. From now on, I'll tell you everything. Julian Hayes will have no secrets from Luna from now on. You fool, was that what I was angry about? Seeing the frostbite on his hands from delivering packages on a scooter for long hours, I felt a pang in my heart and held his hand, half threatening, half pleading. I told him not to do such things for our anniversary again. Julian Hayes grinned and said, Yes, Queen Luna. Now, even knowing it was all fake, I still couldn't bring myself to hate him. I just wanted to disappear from his world. Julian Hayes's watch was indeed valuable. I sold it for $6 million, then contacted the previous jeweler, hoping to buy back my mother's heirlooms, but I was told that the jewelry set had already been sold. Without time for sadness, I left the bracelet in the rental apartment, the second before boarding the plane. I sent Julian Hayes one last message. Let's break up. You win. After deleting all memories, I broke and discarded my SIM card. I came to Harborview, the city my mother had dreamed of. Before meeting Julian Hayes, I had always dreamed of opening my own coffee shop. Because of his illness, this plan had been delayed for a long time now. I used the money I got to take over a small storefront. I cut my long hair short, dyed it chestnut brown, and said goodbye to the past. My coffee shop business gradually improved, and I began to enjoy this busy and fulfilling life. If I hadn't met Leo, everything might have been better. That day, after closing, as I was about to lock the door, a man stumbled into the shop and pulled me behind the bar. Don't make a sound, help me. His voice was urgent and quiet, carrying a hint of threat. I stared at him in horror. The man was dressed in a suit, but his clothes were disheveled, and his face was etched with nervousness and vigilance. I instinctively reached for my phone to call the police, but he immediately sensed it and squeezed my wrist. Don't call the police, or we'll both be in trouble. My face turned pale from the pain, but I still gritted my teeth and didn't make a sound. Okay, but don't try anything funny. About 10 minutes later, the footsteps outside gradually faded. Only then did the man sigh in relief and release my hand. Sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm a private investigator. I was tracking a suspect for a case just now and accidentally exposed myself. Only then did I notice his appearance. Under his messy black hair was a chiseled face, and his dark eyes were bright and piercing. My name is Leo. As an apology, let me treat you to dinner. I wanted to refuse, but he already pulled me out the door without asking. In the days that followed, Leo would occasionally drop by the coffee shop to show his apology. He voluntarily helped me with various chores, and sometimes when the shop was busy, he would even help me greet customers. Unknowingly, I had been spending over a week with Leo. He asked me out to dinner again. At the dinner table, I seriously asked Leo, How long are you going to stay at my shop? His movements paused, then he said nonchalantly, What? Are you trying to kick me out so soon? I glared at him. I don't trust you yet. Who sent you? Perhaps my reaction was too direct. Leo laughed so hard he bent over. Finally, he mumbled, Indeed interesting. My heart jumped. This guy, there was definitely something wrong with him. I pretended not to hear and lowered my head, eating my food. What kind of act was this now? He didn't seem like someone on the run, nor did he seem like he wanted to harm me. Instead, he was trying to please me at every turn. He was so good to me. And it certainly couldn't be for some old-fashioned reason like love at first sight. There must be something he wanted from me. But what did I have that was worth so much effort? That day, after the last customer left the coffee shop, I began my usual closing routine. The night outside deepened, and there were few pedestrians on the street. Just as I was about to lock the door, a figure suddenly appeared outside the glass door. My heart instantly pounded, and the keys in my hand almost fell to the floor. It was Julian Hayes. He was impeccably dressed in a suit, his expression unclear in the shadows. I subconsciously took 2 steps back, and he pushed the door open. Luna, long time no see. His voice was still gentle, as if we were merely old friends reunited. I suppressed the fear in my heart and said coldly, Julian Hayes, how did you find this place? He chuckled softly, looking around. Nice little shop. I'm a little relieved to know you've been doing well lately. Thanks to you, I said sarcastically. Are you tired of gourmet food? Or are you tired of living in mansions and want to experience poverty again? Julian Hayes's expression froze for a moment but quickly returned to normal. Luna, I can explain. Just then, Leo walked in from the back door. I gave him a cold look, and he guiltily averted his gaze. So Julian Hayes hired you? Luna, I'm sorry. A familiar suffocating feeling washed over me, and panic began to spread. My hand stealthily reached for the alarm button under the counter. So is this another carefully planned game? Julian Hayes walked towards me. No, Luna, I truly love you. It might have started as a game, but later. Enough! I interrupted him sharply. Is your love deception and harm? My hand unconsciously touched my wrist. Julian Hayes noticed my movement, and his eyes softened slightly. You remember that bracelet, don't you? I forgot it long ago. I tried to keep my voice steady. Julian Hayes pressed closer to me. Luna, come back with me. I'll treat you better than before. Don't come any closer. I interrupted him, my voice trembling slightly. I've already called the police. Julian Hayes, I'd rather love a dog than love you again. The air instantly froze. Julian Hayes's expression darkened, and a hint of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. He slowly spoke, his voice low and dangerous. Luna, you must love me, and you can only love me. I stared at the crazed man before me in horror, my heart pounding. Julian Hayes grabbed my wrist, his grip so strong it felt like he would crush my bones. You'll never escape me. I struggled to shake his hand off but was easily subdued. I looked at Leo, desperate. Leo lowered his head. Not daring to meet my eyes, he said to Julian Hayes, Julian, the mission is complete, the payment, it's already in your account. Julian Hayes interrupted him coldly. Not even sparing him a glance, I couldn't help but sneer. What, Julian? Did you realize there's no pet more obedient than me, and now you regret it? Or do you suddenly think I've gained value? Julian Hayes frowned. Luna, don't talk to me in that tone. I turned my face away in disgust. Julian Hayes, you truly sicken me. I looked at Leo, who was standing idly by, and throwing caution to the wind, pointed at him and said to Julian Hayes, I like him now. When he was with me, I couldn't help but sleep with him. Julian Hayes's face instantly turned pale, and Leo hastily explained, Julian, I swear it's not true. You know my professional integrity. I sneered back. Then why were you feeding me at the restaurant and covering me with a blanket? Before I could finish, Julian Hayes suddenly waved his hand, and 2 black-suited bodyguards appeared out of nowhere, dragging Leo out. I immediately shut up. Julian Hayes turned around, his eyes filled with complex emotions. Luna, I brought that bracelet. He pulled out the bracelet I once cherished from his pocket, carefully intending to put it on me. I coldly slapped his hand away, and the bracelet fell to the floor. Julian Hayes, if you're just unwilling to let go, then dump me now, 10 or 100 times. It's fine. After that, we'll be even, okay? I'm tired. Julian Hayes pressed me against the wall. Impossible. I struggled desperately, but I was no match for him. Just then, urgent footsteps sounded from outside the door. Julian, the police are here. We have to leave immediately. The bodyguard's voice was urgent. Julian Hayes suddenly picked me up around the waist. I screamed, struggling fiercely, but his strength was astonishing. Let me go. This is kidnapping. I yelled at the top of my lungs, but Julian Hayes ignored me. I was roughly shoved into a black sedan that had been waiting, and Julian Hayes quickly got in after me. The car door slammed shut with a bang, the engine roared, and the car sped away from the coffee shop. I looked at Julian Hayes in horror, my voice trembling. What do you want to do? Julian Hayes's face looked exceptionally grim in the dim car interior. He slowly spoke. Luna, this time I won't let you escape again. I was held captive by Julian Hayes in his private estate. What was even harder for me to accept was that I was pregnant. Julian Hayes seemed determined to use this to tie me down. Every day, he would bring various gifts to see me, but my depression worsened. I hated this world, and even more, I hated Julian Hayes, the instigator. I couldn't eat anything. After 5 consecutive days without food, Julian Hayes sat by my bed with nourishing soup, pleading with me, Luna, please eat something, like a madwoman. I screamed uncontrollably, raising my hand and knocking the soup from his hand. The soup scalded his hand, turning it red, but he acted as if nothing had happened, instructing the butler, she doesn't like bitter tastes, go make chicken soup. Watching his feigned affection made me even more nauseous. Julian Hayes, do you have a masochistic tendency? I don't love you. I wish I could kill you and this bastard in my belly right now, I said coldly. Hearing this, Julian Hayes's face turned pale, but he quickly recovered. He hugged my waist, buried his head in my lap, and murmured softly, keep him, at least as a reason for you to live. Having him will only make me want to die more. I pushed him away, hid under the covers, pretending not to hear his sob. Since being confined, I had tried to escape, but each time I was easily caught. This place suffocated me. Once, I even smashed a vase and tried to harm myself with the fragments. Julian Hayes arrived in time and stopped me. His eyes held an unresolvable sadness. Luna, do you hate me that much? Can't even our child keep you here? Yes, I replied without hesitation. From then on, Julian Hayes rarely appeared before me. I thought he had finally understood. Unexpectedly, that night, Julian Hayes suddenly burst into my room. His appearance startled me. His shirt was disheveled, and his eyes were filled with despair. Luna, he murmured, if I had been honest with you from the beginning, would we not have reached this point today? I didn't speak, only feeling intensely annoyed. There were no such what-ifs. The beginning might have been different, but the outcome would have been the same. He was a favored son, a notorious business magnate in New York City, while I was just an ordinary person. The scenario of a prince falling in love with Cinderella happening to me would only feel absurd. Julian Hayes stumbled towards me, then suddenly knelt on the floor. I looked at him in surprise, wondering what he was doing. Luna, I really can't live without you. He looked up at me, tears welling in his eyes, but I don't know what to do. I was a little angry, feeling like he was playing games with me again, and couldn't help but yell at him. What to do? We can go down together. No one gets out alive. I can't bear for you to die, Luna. He called my name repeatedly, his voice gradually growing softer. Then he pulled a small knife from his pocket. Before I could react, he had savagely slit his own wrist. Julian Hayes, what are you doing? I cried out in horror, but he suddenly turned and ran towards the balcony. I chased after him, fear washing over me like a tide. No, I screamed, reaching out to grab him. However, Julian Hayes had already climbed over the balcony railing. In the moment of falling, his eyes seemed to hold a sense of relief. I desperately reached out, and finally, at the last second, I caught his hand, but my strength was too small. I couldn't support his weight at all. I was pulled forward, almost falling with him. Let go, Luna. He looked up at me, a bitter smile on his face. Don't sacrifice your life for me. You're crazy. Hold on tight, I cried, desperately trying to pull him up. My arm trembled from the strain. His hand slowly loosened. His eyes filled with a sense of release. I'm sorry, Luna. I love you. These were his last words, his voice so soft it was barely audible. I watched him fall with my own eyes. My heart seemingly stopped. I rushed to the stairs, stumbling down. My mind was blank. Rushing out the main door, I saw Julian Hayes lying on the ground. Under the moonlight, his body appeared especially pale and fragile. I knelt beside him, carefully cradling him in my arms. His body still had residual warmth, but I couldn't feel his breath. Julian Hayes, wake up. Please wake up. My tears fell uncontrollably. My hand touched the wound on his wrist. Warm blood was still slowly flowing out. I quickly pressed against the wound with my sleeve, futilely trying to stop the bleeding. Julian Hayes took his last breath in my arms. A faint smile still seemed to linger on his lips, as if he had finally shed all his burdens. As I felt his body grow gradually cold, my mind was blank. Julian Hayes unconditionally bequeathed all his assets to me. I held the bracelet he had personally woven for me, sitting alone from late night until dawn. The private doctor seemed unable to bear it, stepping forward and saying to me, "Ms. Luna, you haven't slept all night. Please go upstairs and rest, or Mr. Hayes will be sad even in heaven." Towards the end, he couldn't help but choke up, looking at me with concern. Hearing the address Ms. Luna, I suddenly snapped back to reality. Yes, Julian Hayes and I hadn't even formalized our marriage. Yet now I was the sole heir to all his property. The new doctor, unaware of the complicated relationship between Julian Hayes and me, naively believed I was just a pitiable woman who had lost her love. "Ms. Luna, you truly must get some good rest. If not for yourself, then for the baby in your belly." That's right. I was still carrying his child. Now that Julian Hayes was gone, I was free to decide the child's fate. But why did the mere thought of giving up hurt so much it was hard to breathe? With the doctor's help, I returned to the bedroom. That night, Julian Hayes didn't appear in my dreams. Perhaps he was afraid to see my disgust for him. The next day, Julian Hayes' private assistant delivered his belongings. As he left, the assistant looked at me meaningfully. "Ms. Luna, Mr. Hayes actually loved you more than you could ever imagine." I lowered my head in silence, pretending not to hear his sigh, and turned back into the room. What Julian Hayes had sent through his assistant was a USB drive. I stood in a daze on the balcony, gazing at the distant city lights. After a long time, I finally mustered the courage to insert the USB drive. The screen lit up, and Julian Hayes' face appeared in the frame. He looked haggard but serene, and began to speak. "Luna, my love, please forgive me for calling you that one last time. I know this might make you angry, but I can't help but be selfish one more time. You'll tolerate me, won't you? I've actually always regretted it. I've thought countless times, if our meeting hadn't been filled with so many calculations, maybe you wouldn't hate me so much, but there aren't that many ifs in life." He gave a self-deprecating smile. "Luna, your mother's heirlooms. I bought them back. They're in the safe in the study. Perhaps this will lessen your hatred for me, and even if it doesn't, I won't be around to see it. After I'm gone, you must take good care of yourself, eat on time, go out more often. Only if you're healthy can I rest easy." He choked back a sob, rubbed his reddened eyes, and took a deep breath. "As for the child, if you truly don't want it, then follow your heart. I really wanted to keep staying with you. I couldn't bear to let you go. But I also knew clearly that I was the source of your pain, Luna. You are the only person in this world I can't let go of. I never told you about my past. I was actually an adopted child of the Hayes family. My adoptive mother had a pathological possessiveness over me. She controlled me in various ways, and even used some disgusting methods to force me. Those memories still fill me with shame and fear to this day. And my adoptive father, he died of a heart attack after killing my adoptive mother. A tragedy brought an end to that twisted family. I inherited their wealth, but also bore an inescapable psychological shadow. My constant testing of your feelings for me stemmed from my fear and distrust of relationships. But you're different, Luna. You're an angel. Please forgive my selfishness and cowardice. I truly hope you can find happiness. Even if that happiness has nothing to do with me. Live well, Luna. I'm going to atone for the sins I've committed." The video ended there. By the time I reacted, my face was already streaked with tears. I sympathized with his ordeal. But that was no reason for him to hurt me. He couldn't use his own pain to destroy my life. The next morning, I still scheduled an abortion procedure. I couldn't forget that day's hellish experience. Everything connected to Julian Hayes, I had to completely cast aside. After dealing with everything, I boarded a flight to Harborview. I watched the city's silhouette gradually blur, turning into a dense cluster of lights. All the noise and turmoil that had once troubled me now seemed so distant. I told myself, it would be okay. Everything would be okay.